Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 479 of Ink in Your Veins. I'm Rachael Herron. I am thrilled that you are here with me today for this wonderful conversation with Heidi McIntyre. We're going to be talking about how to build the support that you want. And we're going to talk about having lots of space around your writing and about doing your own marketing, something we always want to think about and talk about, but we don't always want to do. And I just think she's a such a great resource to talk to about this. So you will enjoy that. That is coming up in the interview section. What is going on around here? I have a couple of Patreon mini coach questions. Just a reminder, you can go to patreon.com/Rachael, Rachael. And for $5 a month, I can be your mini coach. And I've got a bunch of y'all. And you don't ask me that many questions. You can ask me as many questions as you want. So I've got two here today. Let's jump in. This one comes from Jessica, who says, "Hi, Rachael, new subscriber here. I've so enjoyed your podcast. Thank you. I have a question. It's a two-parter. Number one, I'm working on a new series, and I'd love any advice you have. I've written and sold the first two books. Congratulations. The first is written, and I'm in edits. I'm about 25,000 words into the second book, and wow, it's harder than I expected to write a sequel. Would love any general advice you might share on planning the series, getting subsequent books started, or anything else you think I should know." So that's the first question, then I'll go to the second question. The first question is this: planning a series. For me, it's always helpful to think about what the series intentions are. If we are writing something like romance, where they are pretty much standalones with people who will be focused on for one book, and then the focus moves off of them and onto somebody else, but they're still in the same world, it's a little bit different. You just have to bring the world in and the surroundings, the environment, but you don't have to worry about building a few people character-wise, and then in the next book, making them continue to grow, which is what you have when you are writing something that is a series that has people that continue on. So we keep the focus on the same person or people. Those are not harder to write. In some ways, they may be a little bit easier because you are so deep in them. You don't have to start all over with brand new characters, but it can be more complicated because you do want these characters still to struggle and still to grow, even though you got them to a beautiful resolution place at the end of book one, say. So it can be useful to think about let's just talk about one main character. How does this main character, what was her character arc in book one? How did it resolve? And how can there be a complication inside this same or similar character arc that makes it a little bit harder for her to grow in the next book? It will up the stakes a little bit. Rather than worrying about plot, because plot can be built around anything, readers read series for the characters and for the places that they get to inhabit and get used to inhabiting. So think about complicating those characters, but in a prismatic way. And what I mean by that is, if, I'm making this up on the fly, if her character arc was moving from being a rugged loner to having to work inside a small community and being okay with that, having the confidence, let's say she has to learn the confidence in book one to let go of some control in order to work well with a few other people. In book two, she can take that old urge, and obviously none of this is, I'm just making this up on the fly, but she can take that old urge to be a loner. She's got this little group of people now. They're loners. They're a loner group. They will do everything together. There's 5 of them, and they will fix the world. And perhaps in this book, she has to learn how to fit that group into a larger group. So there's going to be more tension, more expectation, higher stakes, having her be the leader of this group that now has to fit into a bigger community. Something I've heard often is if you're writing, say, a trilogy with the same person or people as the main focal points in the book, the main characters. In the first book, they learn to save themselves. In the second book, they learn to save their community. And in the third book, they learn to save the world. And that's a gross oversimplification, but we can think about it that way. So thinking about upping the stakes, but keeping them similar enough. because that's what humans do, right? That's what we do. I'm constantly learning the same things over and over again, and I'm getting better and better at them, but the stakes go up as we learn and grow, and that's what our characters are going to do too. So when I'm planning them, I'd like to think first about character arc and then fit the plot around that character arc. If I want to do something with this character, what kind of plot will support that and the stakes that I want in this book. Second part of Jessica's question says, I've had the great advice to start a series Bible, but haven't found much information on how to do this well. If you have any experience or advice on how to organize, what to include, etc., I'd love to hear it. Yes, I've had two big series Bibles, one for Cypress Hollow, one for Darling Bay. And you're right, there's not a lot of information out there. There are virtual assistants who will do that for you, and they'll read your books and they will make them for you, and they'll make it beautiful and have charts and graphs and probably pictures and Pinterest boards. I have never done that. What I have done is I have a really ugly Excel spreadsheet. You could just as easily use a Google Sheets form spreadsheet. I find a spreadsheet useful. I list every character. Oh, that's my timer going off. Hold on. Sorry, that was my sourdough timer going off, and yes, I'm getting back into the sourdough now that we're back from holiday. Where were we were talking about the series Bible. On that spreadsheet, I just kept track of every character's name. Next to the name, I put the description. And that's always hard for me, but I would find it. I would maybe put a little bit about who they were in relation to the main characters. This is the father of, or the sister of, or the cousin who did what. And I would put every place that occurs in the book, every setting that could possibly be, and how I describe it in the book. I just copy and paste it into there. So I'm keeping track of characters, settings. This would be a great place. I've never been organized enough to do it, but to have a pretty comprehensive log line that talks about what happens in this book and it's very simple, broken down. You wouldn't share this with anybody, but first they do this and then they do this and then they do this, because 5 years from now, when you're into the seventh book in the series, you will have no idea what happens in that book. My assistant Ed was just doing a new back cover for Fiona's Flame, and I was proofreading the text on the back cover, and I was like, "This, I must have written this at some point, or maybe Ed wrote it. I'm not sure." But it was interesting. I was like, "Oh, what will happen if they have this opposing conflict?" That is so interesting, because I had completely forgotten. I haven't read that in more than a decade. So having all that in one place is great. Sometimes I will make it so that it sorts the names alphabetically, because it can be confusing for readers to have more than one name that starts with the same letter, especially if that name is approximately the same length or shape. So you can have an Abe and an Alexander, but maybe not an Abel and an Alex, which are the same number of letters, kind of same shape. That can be confusing. So sometimes I will sort alphabetically and make sure that I don't have too much overlapping. Of course, there's only 26 letters in the alphabet, and most of my books have more than 26 characters in them, named, especially in these worlds in which they live. We're seeing a lot of different characters. So having them all in one place, super, super helpful, and it does not need to be pretty. It just has to hold enough to jog your own memory, no one else's. Oh, another thing that's really useful to have is a timeline, an approximate timeline, years, months, dates, if you have them, of when these things occurred. And they can be fictional years. It can be, year one in the book, and this happened in August, and this happens in November, and then year two. So you don't actually have to name the time, the actual year that the book is set in, if that is not important to your plot, because sometimes that can date a book too quickly. It can be something you leave in, absolutely. But if you have the mention of dates, or when this thing happened at Easter and the next thing didn't happen until Christmas, have that in there too. So we got characters, setting, timeline, and a rough plot with the log line. That's all I put in the Bible, and it is super, super, super helpful to have. So thank you for asking that, Jessica, and welcome. And second question comes from Yvonne, who says, "Hello, Miss Rachel. I finally have a question for you to address. I'm working on a memoir. I think it might be suitable for a broader audience, so I'm looking into getting an agent. But sending out query letters requires doing research first. Agents have specializations and interest areas. What do people who write in multiple different genres do with their agents? Do they have an agent for each genre in which they write? Do they find an agent who can do a multitude of genres? How does this work? Do you have one for your memoirs and one for your romance? One of my Clifton strengths is strategic, so a simple go find an agent for this memoir isn't simple. I'm seeing light years in advance and searching for the best path forward for me and all my sci-fi and fantasy books. Fabulous question. My agent represents everything that I have. And she is willing to do that. Not all agents are that willing to do it. They just don't want to. They have their specialties and they know what they are and they know what they want to focus on. So what I normally recommend is whatever is first ready to go. The book is completed. It's revised to the best of your ability. It used to be that we could sell memoirs on proposal, or an agent would pick us up on proposal and then try to sell it. That's less and less common. So normally the memoir or novel, it's always been this way for fiction, should be completed, revised, and then if it's the first thing you want to get out of the door, focus on an agent whose strength is memoir. Secondarily, because you've said sci-fi and you've said all my sci-fi and fantasy books, so that means you have speculative fiction in your pockets, overflowing from your pockets. So while you're searching, I'm just assuming the memoir is done first. If the memoir is done first, go look for an agent who specializes in memoir. And it would be nice if they also represent some genre fiction of some sort. It doesn't even need to be science fiction fantasy, although it could be. That would be nice. But I would not restrict the search to agents who do both. And here's why. If you get an agent who falls in love with your work, they're not falling in love with this memoir particularly, they're falling in love with your writing voice. And an agent who is passionate about your writing voice might be passionate about taking out other books, other properties, like speculative fiction. All agents have communities and they talk to each other. If your agent who represents your memoir doesn't really know how to represent science fiction, she will talk to everybody that she knows who is representing science fiction and start asking them for the best names of the editors, who to reach out to, who to have lunch with, who to do all that. And you want them to be excited in you first. So that'll work. The other thing is that if an agent is passionate about you, your voice, and your memoir, and doesn't represent science fiction or fantasy, that's the point at which she says, oh, I don't do that, but I can recommend Lacey over there or Kim over this agency. Now you have a direct in, and those people know everybody. Agents know everybody. They will know who is looking for what and who is acquiring what. So when you are reaching out, when you're sending that query letter out, if memoir is the first thing that you want to get off of your desk, I would not even mention in the query letter that you also write science fiction and fantasy. That is not what they want to hear. Pretend like you only write memoir. The only time that this will come up in conversation is when you are on the phone with them and they are about to or already have offered you representation. That's when you get to say, hey, you know what's really cool is I also write science fiction and fantasy. Do you have any interest in seeing that? And they'll either say, I love you. I love your work. Of course, I want to see it. Or they'll say, oh, I don't represent that and I don't really want to, but I know 5 fabulous people who would love to work with you on that. So my short answer is focus on what is ready to go off your desk. Find a ton of agents who represent that, and a ton of agents do represent memoir. And strategic is also high for me. It's in my top 5. And it is hard to not worry about trying to find an agent who can do it all. You absolutely don't need that. Just another thing about genres is that the genres that are far apart you'll sometimes have different representation, like memoir to YA fiction. Oftentimes you'll have different agents. Memoir, which is technically nonfiction, although it's written in with a good story structure, is far away from genre fiction. And that is a point where you may end up with different agents. But again, agents just want to sell books. They want to sell money. They want to make money off of us. Yes, I hope that helps. I hope that that is a helpful answer. Keep me posted. And that is also super, super, super exciting. So well done, you. All right. Those are the questions answered. I wanted to also mention that I was recently on Stacey Fraser's show, the Write It Scared podcast, and that was episode number 38. The Write It Scared podcast. You may enjoy it. It was super fun to talk to Stacey. And the episode is called Dear Writer, You're Not Screwing This Up with author Rachael Herron. You're not screwing this up because you're not screwing this up. You are doing awesome. Please remember that. All of you. You're doing awesome. You're here, you're listening, you're thinking about writing. Fantastic. What else has been going on? My family's about to land in town and I'm a little bit freaked out about it. It'll be what it is. My father-in-law and his partner are coming in, and my dad and my stepmom are coming in, and they're going to be here for about 3 weeks. And family and holidays. Yeah, they don't usually come to New Zealand. It's a long way to come. So I'm going to take a little bit of time off and do some fun traveling around and seeing some things and hanging out with family and recovering from hanging out with family that we love and that you all know can be. It's just family can be a challenge at this time of year. So I don't foresee the podcast not going out in the next few weeks. If it doesn't go out, it doesn't go out. I am just so glad that you are here and that you are getting your writing done. I hope that you are on my email newsletter because I just sent out a good one about how to deal with the inner critic. Because there's one true tactic that we use when dealing with the inner critic. You can find that by going to rachelherron.com/write and signing up for the newsletter, and the archive will pop up there too. And also, if you want to talk more about silencing the inner critic and getting more writing done in 2025, more productivity without the stress, the pressure-free productivity is what I'm calling it. I've got a 2-hour workshop coming up on January 4th. The replay will be sent out. If you can't be there, not a problem. Just go to rachelherron.com/no worries. rachelherron.com/no worries. And it's going to be a really fun workshop that I would love to have you in. And we are going to talk about how to get the writing done without the pressure, without the guilt or the just the dread feeling, how to do it joyfully, to get more done in 2025 and have fun doing it. So that's over there. All the links are in the show notes. And I want to tell you a little bit about Heidi McIntyre. Heidi McIntyre's journey as a writer began in college when a professor convinced her to switch majors to English, igniting her passion for storytelling. With a background in marketing consulting, Heidi spent years specializing in fresh produce, collaborating with growers, commodity boards, and industry associations to elevate their brands. Today, she channels her expertise into helping authors as a book marketing coach. Heidi self-published her debut novel, Sea Magic, in 2023, which is the first in a women's paranormal fiction series. She lives in Oviedo, Florida, with her husband Tim and their 2 dogs, Pumpkin and Lizzie. She loves coffee, chocolate, yoga, and visiting historical places. And I know you are going to enjoy this delightful conversation. Please stick around for it. And best of luck, all of you, with your writing and with your families if they're coming into town. I'm thinking about you. All right, here we go. Well, I could not be more pleased to welcome you to the show. Will you please share your name and your pronouns with us?
Sure. I'm Heidi McIntyre, and it's she, her.
Thank you, Heidi. Welcome, welcome. I am so excited to talk to you about writing today. As we record this, is the day after the election, so I think both of us are like, and it's
Hallelujah.
nice to think about work. It's nice to think about this kind of thing. So, can I talk to you about my favorite thing in the world, which is writing process? What
Ooh.
does your writing process look like in your day-to-day life?
Well, day to day, I give myself lots of space when I write. And so I can write in like 45-minute sessions, but then it's like 15, 20 minutes. And I
Mm.
need that kind of, in between space to sort of collect myself. So that's really like a big part of my process. I do a very general outline when I start a book. It's only like 7 or 8 pages. I spent a ton of time in character development, really getting into the headspace of my characters. And I'm very visual. So everything I do is like
Mm.
super visual. So I have a Pinterest page and I have a board for every character, their clothes, their style, their likes, where they live, what their apartment
Wow.
or home looks like. And then I have a board for my fictional town. It's in the on the coast of New England for my series. And
Mhm.
I have a board for like all the other, the sea and all the other. I have a mermaid who comes in and out of the book. And so I have a board for the mermaid and I use that a lot. And then I have a PowerPoint presentation. So I don't outline the chapter until right before I'm going to write it, but I take some of those image, I put it into the chapter and I have to see it before I write it. I'm just very visual as a writer. It's just a thing for me. And so all those images really help me to get centered.
That is
It's
so
kind of
cool.
funny.
How is it, how long before you start writing a book do you start building those visual repositories?
I do it like right as I'm outlining, I'll think about it and I'll start doing it, but I add on to it. Like because I don't outline the chapters until I'm about to start, I'll add some more images if I need to. And so I'll grow the image bank pretty
So basic,
much.
so basically you have the outline and you
Yes,
have your image bank for all of these different things. And then when you say you don't outline the chapter, basically you go to the chapter that you're going to write next, and then you outline it and
yes,
then you write it. I
exactly.
love
Yes,
that.
yes.
That's a really great way to go because it's still fresh, right? Your writing is still fresh. You
It
haven't,
is,
yeah.
yeah. And you know how when you outline, things can tend to go off the rails, So if I did all my
Yeah, like
chapters up
one
front,
second later, yeah, it's gone.
yeah, it would be totally like it would be all over the place. And so I know that because I know that, I don't, I want to give myself the space to let it go off the rails because sometimes when it goes off the rails, it's the best part of the book. You're being told
Mhm.
or you're intuiting, I need to move in this direction.
I think that like having the visual stuff too would be such a great place to follow that intuition because as you're kind of poking around for images, I'm sure you're running across other images that are
Yes.
inspiring. Maybe I'll even I've spoken many times on the show about how I am not a visual person. I just can't see anything in my head, and I'm actually freaking myself out right now because the book I just started writing has two real characters, so their faces are in my outline, and I'm not used to seeing any images at all, but I'm kind of enjoying it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's how I am. I need that sort of like, I need to see the image and then I can feel comfortable writing about it, which is great for me.
I also really like the way you said you have space around your writing. Are you
Mhm.
are you going intentionally for 45 minutes or whatever it is, or do you just kind of write until you need a break and then take a break? How does that work?
Yeah, it usually doesn't last much longer. It usually lasts around 45. It typically doesn't last an hour,
Me
and I've
too.
come,
I top
and
out right about then, 45,
yeah, and I
50
don't
minutes.
clock it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I look at the clock and I go, oh yeah, okay, I'm stopping. This is why it's 45 minutes. I need that 20-minute break or whatever. And I think that's important for me it because I came from a field where I was more of the executive, in marketing consulting, and I had a very rigid schedule. I had a whole production list of what I had to get done that day, and I was like, I would sit in the computer and not move until I was done. And as a creative, it's different. The creative side of me is a hippie, new age person that's like, go with the flow. What are you doing? You need space. Breathe the fresh air for a few minutes and then come back to it.
But good for you for being able to make that switch because I'm still, years after doing this full time, I'm still working on trying to allow the hippie new age part of me to come out because I love that you were able to kind of
Yes.
shift gears
Yeah.
to do that. And
Yeah.
this,
But the two sides struggle with each other because the
yeah.
executive in me wants to go do the marketing stuff for the book. And the creative is like, no, you gotta let it loose, right? Be creative, have fun, go with the flow, And so, yeah, they do spark at each other. It's kind of like Joanna Penn's writing The Shadow, the good
Yeah.
horse and the dark horse and the white horse, except mine are
Yeah.
reversed. My creative is actually the white horse, and my executive is the dark horse. She's the taskmaster workaholic.
Oh, I really like thinking of it that way in the opposite way because I definitely agree. That's my workaholism dark
Yeah.
horse. Yeah, that
Mhm.
is the one that is often
Crack the
yeah.
whip.
Yeah, yeah. That's fantastic. Thank you. That's food for thought for later for me. Okay, what is the most exciting thing that you ever realized about your writing process?
I think that I weigh heavily in character development, and I love to develop the characters. And so to me, that's like the most fun because I love to get inside their heads. I'm a people watcher. And
Yeah.
so to me, it's just a blast to be able to do that. So I think, and also I get into what I call the flow state. You had a guest on that talked about the zone, I think that was
Hmm.
Allie,
Hmm.
yeah. And I really related to that because there are moments when I'm writing or at certain points where I go into what I call the flow, and it's like I'm in the scene with the characters. And I have this inspiration and I get these ideas and it's joyful and it's peaceful and the writing is just flowing and flowing and there's no judgment or I'm not getting in my head. I'm just there.
Ah.
And I think that to me is what makes writing special. It's those moments that I go, okay, now I know why I'm doing this because it's not easy to write a book. It's hard. But those joyous moments, just being in that, collective unconscious or whatever you call it, and I can get like downloads and I get tons of inspiration. It makes it all worth it.
Do you have any tips or tricks for doing that deep character work that you go back to again and again?
Yes. Where I got that from was Truby's book, John Truby's book, The Anatomy,
Anatomy of
yeah, of a
Story.
Story.
Yeah.
And he really made me go deep and think deeply about the character motivations, their strengths and weaknesses and desires and goals and all of that. And that really set me up and really helped me to really kind of get into the characters' minds and be able to really understand that as they go along and as I develop their arcs. I also develop the relationship arcs between the characters
Mhm.
beforehand or sometimes during, because I really want to get all that down and really understand them at a very visceral level, which is fun.
Because I like the nitty gritty. Where are you keeping all this information as you are developing it?
I have a separate PowerPoint for the characters,
I think you
and I
might
have
be
all
one of
their pictures.
the very first people who's ever been on the show who talks about using PowerPoint for it. So that's
I know it's good. That was my executive, by the way, who used PowerPoint.
you're like, I know how to run this program.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so I have like several pages for each character, and then I
Yeah.
put in some of the visuals, and then I put their all the details about who they are. And then sometimes they change and say, I in my second book, Dark River Magic, that I'm writing right now, I had the second main character. I had her down to a T. I had her outlined beautifully. I understood her. I knew what her motivations were. And then I was probably about a third of the way through the book, and she was like, "No, that's not me." And I was like, "Oh God," you know. And I got stuck, and I had to go back and refigure her out. And it was a challenge, but it also, I think, it made the book better because I just realized, okay, this is who she's meant to be. So,
Mhm.
but yeah,
And
that
you,
was kind of interesting.
but you did a good job of listening to that and figuring out that that was the
Yes.
problem and
Yeah.
paying attention. Yeah.
Yeah. I have found that usually when I get stuck, if there's a problem with the storyline or the characters, for me, and
Mhm.
that's where I have to stop and take a step back and figure it out. And this is actually the third book I'm reading. The first book I didn't. It was like the book I cut my teeth on, so I never published it.
Mhm.
But every single book, I get to about page 49 or 50, and I stop completely, and I end up having to go back and rewrite the whole thing because I realize something's way off. I'm not on, and I maybe I have to work through it for the first 50 pages before I
Mhm.
go, this is the wrong direction. I got to rethink this storyline or where I'm coming from.
I would say
Yeah.
that is
And
the
then,
thing I hear a lot, and that is exactly what I do too. I usually get 50 to 75 pages in, and
yeah.
then I can do such a hard U-turn that the book that
Yes.
comes out doesn't even resemble what I thought I was heading
Yes.
for. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it can be an exercise in frustration sometimes. What part of writing do you struggle with most?
Getting the words down on the page. I love to edit. I could edit for years. I could get
Me too.
stuck in editing,
Yeah.
and I'm a perfectionist, so that doesn't help either. But I struggle with, I'm a slow writer. I
Hmm.
don't write quickly. So it's just getting it down. I get into my head, I get analytical about it, and I struggle with like, okay. But one thing that has really helped me the past couple of months that I've switched to as a tool is dictating. And
Mm.
but my dictation is not like I'm dictating as I'm writing it.
Hmm.
I'm working out what's happening in the chapter so that it
Ooh,
eases
tell
my
me more.
mind.
Tell me more
Like
about
I
the process.
describe,
What do you do?
yeah, I'll describe the scene and I'll
Hmm.
describe what they're saying to each other, but it's usually way long and just it goes on and on and on sometimes because I'm trying to work out in my mind what is happening next. And I find that that's what is why I'm a slow writer because I'm trying to figure out what's happening next. So it's almost like I work it out in advance through the dictation. A lot of it I don't use in the story
Hmm.
because it rambles a lot,
Hmm.
but it puts my mind at ease because I'm not worried about, oh, like what's the next thing or what's how does he come into the room? Those types of
Yeah.
things.
And the other thing is that once you have done that with dictation, no matter what, whether you use it or not, then you're in your happy space of editing too. You're,
Yes.
you've got a little something on the page that you can be playing with. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it brings out my competitive side for myself. Like I go, oh my God, I can do so much better than that. What the hell? That's awful. And then
That
I
is very
challenge
true.
myself. Yeah, you can rock that.
I don't know if I've ever really thought about the competitive part of saying, well, that sucked. I can do better of your own stuff. That's really beautiful, actually. Have you done the Clifton Strengths that Sasha and
Yes.
I are always talking about? Where's your competition?
It's in there, but it's low.
Oh,
It's
okay.
interesting. I'm competitive with myself, but not around other people, which is
Hmm.
funny.
Yeah.
I'm more
I'm the same.
strategic.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm much more strategic. I have like developer connectedness, empathy, those types
Oh,
of, things.
those are
Yeah.
good ones for writers. So, then what are we may have already touched on this a little bit, but what are you really, really good at writing wise? You've mentioned the character development.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I'm good at descriptions and setting the scenes,
Well,
and
you would
world
be because
building.
you're visual. You can see these
Yes.
in your head, right?
And I love that part.
Ah,
I love it because it's
I hate
poetic
it
too.
so much. I just can't stand it.
You need a picture.
I do, and I need to describe it. In fact, I have one of the I can't remember. It must be a one of the Angela Ackerman books, but it's the rural setting thesaurus and the urban setting thesaurus, and you can open things up
Oh,
like dentist office. What would you hear and see? But especially for me, see hardware store. What would you see in there? And I open those things
oh,
up because I can't even see in my head what would be inside a hardware store. Once I pass hammer, nothing else.
yes.
Maybe a saw. That's
Wow.
it. But yeah, so it must be so nice to be able to see those things. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Well, may I ask you, what is the kindest thing you've ever done for yourself as a writer?
I started a indie author support group a year
Ooh,
before I launched my novel, and it was all debut authors, and it's the women's fiction indie author support group, and this was a part of we all belong to the Women's Fiction Writers Association, and they
hmm.
have their own Facebook page for indie authors. And I'm like, publishing a book is hard. It's not easy. There's so many layers. There's so many things
Hmm.
you have to remember or figure out on your own. And I thought I need a support group for myself. And I went on there and I just asked if anybody's planning to write or publish a book in this next year, come talk to me. And I got like 12 people immediately. And it was awesome. And it's been 3 years, we're up to 24 people, but we like to keep it intimate.
Yeah.
And we support each other's book launches. We do cross promotions together. I've brought in a ton of guest speakers. In fact, I brought in Becca Simon, Claire Taylor has spoken to us.
Fabulous.
Mhm.
I was
Yeah.
diving down the Enneagram earlier today myself. So yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool.
So so that support network, are you open to other people joining? If I have listeners who are
Yes.
interested in contacting you, I know you're keeping it intimate, but how
Yeah,
would they find that?
I think in January we're going to open it up again and bring some people in. Every year, usually at the beginning of the year, we'll bring several people into the group. And I think it's because we want it it's such a close relationship that we have with each other.
Yeah.
And so we want to be able to continue to build that. But new people bring new energy, they bring new ideas and their own strengths, and it just adds to the group over time.
What you did was and I love that this is the answer to the kindest thing you've done question, because you knew you needed support.
Yes.
So you built it and
Yes.
attracted it to you and you helped others and then you get the most support of all. Like think about
Yeah.
how your network has expanded from doing
Yes.
this and how your community
Yes.
has expanded.
It's been amazing. It really, really has been. And we've evolved together and we've gone to like, we know when we're going in a new direction and then we bring in guest speakers around that. In fact, we're reading Black's book on the anatomy of a bestseller as a group because we're in
Fabulous.
that stage of we need to figure out like what sells, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
yeah.
you're doing this book club together and you're doing this and oh, that is so cool. So people listening, please keep this in mind. If you're looking for support, it is incredibly valuable. It's selfishly one of the best things you can do for yourself if you create it yourself.
Yes.
If you build it. And I famously hate Facebook, but Facebook groups are so useful for finding
Yes.
groups of people that might want to do this kind of thing. And there are, and it's just a Google away, so many different Facebook groups for indie authors, for all kinds of authors, and then get in there and start listening and
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know,
And we meet every other week on Zoom, and then we have an annual Christmas party on Zoom and it's just fun and it's wonderful and we're all friends and we're planning a retreat for next year too as a group,
oh,
you
that
know.
just sounds so fun. Well done, you. That is one of my
Thank
favorite
you.
answers I have ever received to this
Oh,
kindest
good.
question. You built exactly what you needed, but in doing so, you're helping so many other people. That is fabulous. Can you please tell us about a specific moment that you knew you had ink in your veins?
Yeah, I think it was in my 40s. This is when I first started to realize I wanted to really write a book. I was in at a produce conference because I worked, I was at I spent my career in marketing,
Hmm.
consulting, and I worked in the fresh produce industry. So I worked with commodity boards and trade associations and growers and things like that. And I gotten to the point where I just knew that I was stuck. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just knew that I needed to do something else. I couldn't figure out what it was, and I was just frustrated. So I was at this show, and I literally was up all night trying to figure it out. And in early morning hours, I said, "Why don't you just try to write a book?" And I was an English major in college, and I always wanted to do that. And I thought, well, maybe that's the solution. I'll do that on the side. And I'll never forget when I went to it was a historical romance, the book I have not published. And I
Hmm.
went to the library to research, and I was never so happy about something when I was in that library and researching, and I was so excited. And when I started to write the book, it was amazing because I felt softer, less irritable. I was more creative in my day job. I just knew. I thought, okay, this is it. I'll do whatever it takes to do this.
I love that when you're talking about writing, this idea of spaciousness and ease is really, really flowing from you. Like this
Yeah.
is what you get from
Yeah.
doing this. Is that right?
Yeah. And I'll tell you,
Yeah.
it has calmed me down completely from who I used to be.
It might have calmed me down a little bit, but not that much. But I can see the peace and the joy on your
Yes.
face when you're thinking about
Yes.
this. And yes, I think probably everyone listening has had those moments that we can remember being in the quote unquote library or wherever it was that we first started to research, could I write a book? How to write a book? How would I do it? And it's the
Yeah.
most
It was like a
wonderful space.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think it's like we all have that creative well within us.
Hmm.
And I had suppressed mine, because I was a business. So it was all business for me. And when
Hmm.
I opened that door, it's just something flowed inside of me. And I let that creative new agey hippie out.
And what that thing that was flowing was ink in your veins. That's
Yes.
what it was. All right. Will you please tell us about the best book that you have read recently and why did you love it?
Yes. In fact, it's one of my group members, Sarah Branson. She wrote a book called North Country. She's a science fiction writer, and it's part of her Pirates of the New Earth series. It's related
Oh,
to that series. It's like an add-on book, and she has
good
the
series
most
title.
Yeah, and she has the most amazing descriptive prose that I
Mm.
mean, it just flows out of her. And I don't read science fiction, but I could not put that book down. And I'm here in Florida, and we had that recent hurricane,
Yeah.
and it was a scary night. And I was up, and I just had her. It's the Ark book because it's not coming out until next year. But it was a page turner. I totally tuned out the hurricane, and I focused on that, and it kept me at ease and at peace during that kind of crazy time.
You
But
called it the Ark, and I saw actually like Noah's Ark rather than the advanced reader's
yeah, the
copy. And
advanced
it was
reader.
kind of
Yeah.
both of those things for you that night, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I was jealous of her writing. I'm like, she's so good.
Oh,
She's
I love that feeling.
amazing. So it was awesome.
I love that feeling, especially when we know the person, when we get that
Yes.
jealous, like, oh, how did you do this? It's just, it's such a
Yes.
fun feeling to have. And also,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure that you told her that it got you through that night. And I just think there's no
I
bigger
did.
compliment for a writer to be told that your book got me through something scary or difficult or hard or tragic or
Yeah.
anything. It got me through.
Yeah, that's what she said. She was really excited about that. So
Oh, it's awesome.
cool.
Awesome. So, can you please tell us about? I want you to tell me about everything. I want you to tell me about your novel that is out right now, and I want you to
Okay.
tell me about the other stuff that you're doing. Tell me everything.
Okay, it's called Sea Magic. It's the first in a series, the Hidden
Such a
Gem
great
series.
cover,
And
too.
I do that. Here's my book. Here.
It's
Yes, that's it.
beautiful, beautiful,
Yes.
deep blue.
And it's about Madeline, who owns an antique shop on the coast of New England and in this fictional town of Pembroke. And she has this ability to touch an object and feel the essence of the previous owner. And so she goes to an estate sale and she finds this box hidden in the corner of a bookshelf. And it's filled with these old coins and this ring and some other trinkets in there. And she knows it's valuable, so she buys it really cheap because they don't know what it is at the estate sale. And she brings it home and she starts to dream about a woman from the 18th century.
Mm.
And this woman was a real life person, Maria Hallett. And so, but the dreams keep her up every night. She's in denial about her abilities. She always is trying to suppress them because she doesn't like to feel different from other people. And so she finally talks to her best friend who introduces her to her history professor in college, who's a hot guy. And
Fabulous.
and he helps her to research the book, and they trace it back to a real life shipwreck, the Ouida shipwreck, and it's the captain of the ship was one of the most wealthiest and notorious pirates in U.S. history, Black Sam Bellamy, and they were engaged. He was engaged to Maria Hallett, and he was
Wow.
coming back from his adventures to marry her, and coming around the coast of Cape Cod, and a gale storm hit and the boat sank. Well, I guess that's not giving away too much, but
I would
that's what
expect
happened.
that of a pirate,
Yeah, and so
that.
there's a dual point of view in the book between
Mm.
Madeline and Maria. And that was
Mm.
challenging because I had it set up that Madeline would be the main point of view. And as soon as I started writing Maria's character, it was like, nope, she wanted her own voice, and I thought, oh my God, this is like my first real book. And I not only have one, I have got two, and then two relationships, and I have to interweave them. And I was like, I am taking on the biggest, scariest challenge. And it was
Oh,
hard, but it was also a huge challenge. So that was
yeah,
great about it because I like to be challenged. I get bored
I do too.
easily. Yeah,
I do too. And that makes what we do always, always wonderful because it will never not challenge us. And if it ever did, we would quit doing it. Tell us, you are
exactly.
also a book marketing coach, is that right? Tell us a little bit about what
Yes.
that looks like.
Well, I when I launched my book, I parlayed my background in marketing into my book marketing, and I really enjoyed it. And as I've been working with this group, I've been just coaching people on the side for a couple of years, and I finally thought, oh, this can be another source of income. And
Mhm.
so I decided, and I really missed working with clients. I missed those in-depth relationships when you're really helping somebody. And
Mhm.
so I started to this past year, I thought, okay, I'll start to market myself as a book marketing coach, and I'm really enjoying it. It's great. I love helping authors to succeed, and I like to really a lot of them, and what's interesting is I work with authors who have strong marketing backgrounds, but you're too close to it. It's hard to
Yeah.
see it. And
Yeah.
so I love to be able to help them, to really move the needle and really understand what to focus on and what they should be doing. And it's wonderful. It's just a good experience for me. And it feeds that side of me that needs that connectedness as one of my strengths.
Yeah.
It feeds that because, writing is an isolated process. And
Yeah.
so to me, it's important to make those connections.
In that in the marketing coaching, what are you helping them look at? Are you dealing with promotion? Are you dealing with advertising? What kind of things are you working with?
Yeah, we start like in some cases, I'll start to do more of a strategic marketing plan for their book, also for their brand and who they are, their goals and
Mhm.
their vision and how they want to position themselves. We'll look at how to find their ideal reader, their target audience, which I have a couple of methods to do that. And then I typically help them with their retail sales page, their Amazon page, because a lot of times the book blurb is way too long and it's more like a synopsis. And, so we go through that together to make it more of a sales blurb. And then we add A+ content to the
Mhm.
page, graphic content. I'll help them with their keywords and categories. And
Oh,
so
great.
they really can position their sales page to really make it work for them. And then we'll do the launch plan. And then I work with them on promote all types of promotions, and different aspects of how to promote their books based on their strengths, because if you don't like something, you're not going to do it well. If you don't like social
Or at
media,
all.
that may not be the place for you to promote it as much
Yeah.
as this other area in your life that you
Yeah.
enjoy.
Oh,
So, yeah. So,
fabulous. And
yeah.
if
And
somebody wanted to get in touch with you about that, where would they find you?
yeah, it's my site, my author site, HeidiMcIntyre.com/coach. And it's right in there in the menu too. And I have
Perfect.
some free guides. I have a guides page where people can download the guides and stuff. And yeah, it's
Awesome.
really good. Yeah, it's
Well,
a way for me to give back too to
yeah,
other authors, and because we're not competing with each other. We need to support each other. So
that is why I love doing the show. And
yeah,
there
yeah, it's
is
fabulous.
there's always room. I believe there's room in this industry for everyone. I think it's also Joanna Penn who always says, like the more people write books, the more they'll read. So I
Yes.
always think, well, that's great.
Yeah, and I've gotten so many insights from the authors you interview because
Me
it's everybody's
too.
different. Their
Yeah.
processes are different, how they approach things are different.
Yeah.
And it's the same with marketing. It really has to flow out of you and flow out of your strengths and who you are as a person.
Yeah, that is fabulous. Thank you so much, Heidi. It has been
Yes.
a delight talking to you. You made my day.
Oh,
And
good.
and happy writing to you.
Thank you. You too. It's been great.